We're going to beat Detroit on that mini bye.
At Detroit?
Yeah, I think that mini bye is going to be huge for
And then you got Detroit again after the bye. So you beat Detroit twice?
Yep.
And welcome back to the latest and greatest episode of the Shaving Points podcast. My name is Jayton May. You can find me on Twitter at JMay56. Joined as always by my co-host, Quentin Crisco. Find him on Twitter at BucketStats. And tonight, as we talk NFC North, we're joined by the legend himself, Brad Spielberger. You can find him on Twitter at PFFBrad. How are we doing tonight, boys?
It's going great. I appreciate you guys having me on and appreciate the far too kind introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you guys haven't checked out Brad's work over at PFF, it's awesome stuff. The contract projections, the free agent profiles he puts out every year, and he's writing articles all the time, it seems like, over there. And Brad, are you still contributing over at Over the Cap, or is that?
Yeah, as much as I can. Yeah, I mean, it's really a labor of love for the guys over there. It's just no one makes money off it. Bunch of dudes who just love the NFL. So, yeah, I'll put in contracts that come across. If I get details, I'll edit stuff on there.
Okay.
Yeah. The man is followed by Adam Schefter, so.
That was pretty cool. That has not lost its luster at all. And I don't know why. This just ties into the show. For whatever reason, I've never interacted with him on Twitter except for one time. He tweeted about the Bears signing – why am I blanking on his name now? The backup quarterback from Carolina, PJ Walker, and I put out the video of PJ Walker throwing like the bomb to DJ Moore, and I was like, Bears, the reunion in Chicago, and for some reason he quote tweeted me on that. So
love that.
It's good stuff, man. Anytime you can get a quote tweet from Shefty, but Why don't we jump into our main segment here? We're doing the NFC North today, and Brad, we know you're a big Bears fan. Yeah, I feel your pain. I understand it. But so we always start this off asking, what's the state of the team through your eyes? So what do you see the state of the Bears as?
It did take a big step forward this offseason, no question about it. Obviously, coming in with the first overall pick with the most cap space in the NFL, you knew they were going to make moves. I think for me, obviously, the splash moves, you go out, you get DJ Moore, you get that legit number one receiver that I think has such a massive effect, not only individually, but also making life easier for Darnell Mooney, Chase Claypool, the tight ends, etc. On defense, the back seven looks interesting, looks talented, looks fast, looks physical. But for me, and I don't think this is anti-analytics per se, but maybe it's not the most analytical thing. I am a football is won and lost in the trenches guy, probably always will be. That's how I view the game. I think everything else, obviously matters. You can scheme around things, but at the end of the day, I think if you're getting whooped in the trenches, it's hard to win football games. And I kind of think they're going to get whooped in the trenches a couple times this year.
Yeah, I understand that sentiment or that feeling. But so on a bit more optimistic note, what's something on this roster that you're really excited for?
I think the multiplicity they have on offense now with so many different weapons. So, again, not just adding the top-end talent, but for me now, they were 26th in 12 personnel last year. I think that will skyrocket with a Robert Tonyan, not just with the comfortability with Luke Getsy, but just, a better player than guys they've had the last couple of years. A true move tight end that I think can, find soft spots in zones, create problems for defenses, and I think they'll try to get a lot more 12 personnel, which I think is interesting. And then also the depth, right? So you have legit 3 running backs. You have 3 receivers with some intriguing, Tyler Smith and Tyler Scott and some interesting guys behind them. I think the Cowboys had is why I said Tyler Smith. And, so it's just cool to see that, you have more pieces now. I think, getting good starters is the first part, but then also having quality rotational pieces behind them. And look, I mentioned the defensive line's not great, but you have a lot of inside-outside flexibility guys. You have a lot of versatile talents. If they can figure out a rotation, maybe that's their key to overcoming it is every guy plays 600 snaps, not 850, 900. So I'm just excited for how many different players, young players, we're going to see contribute this year.
I think that multiplicity you mentioned, it's such a cool aspect that I feel like I've only started to touch the surface of getting into that. For years now, I've been 11 personnel, 12 personnel. Yeah, I know it. I know football, but I didn't actually watch the film and the impacts of it as much. And as I've started to watch the film more, it's man, when you're going to the huddle with 12 personnel, but those guys can both be receivers, or like 21 personnel, but one of those backs can really be a slot receiver. It's like it can really start to play games with the defense. I think it's something that is really growing in the NFL. Or maybe it's not growing. Maybe it's just my noticing of it that's growing. But like it seems like stuff that like Atlanta's doing with their roster, they're the ones that really stand out to me of like, man, they can be so multiple in so many ways and hit you in so many ways based on how you're matching their personnel. That's just, it's really cool to see. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
No, for sure. And I think, honestly, the Packers, the years where we thought, oh, they have Devontae Adams and a bunch of dudes, in Green Bay with Getsy, it's like, yeah, but they also had, Tunyon and Lewis and some younger pieces as well. And you had H-backs, you had guys that could line up in the slot like an Aaron Jones. Like, everyone can do a bunch of different things. And I think it just, if you scheme it correctly, it's just hard for a defense to account for all those guys. Even if they're not superstars, it just makes it a lot harder to kind of know where the ball is going on any given play.
Yeah, finding maxing out your solutions to any problem, I feel like it's just it's always a good thing. Did you have something to say on that, Jay?
No, I was just adding in like MVS on that Packers team. One thing I did have a question about, as I'm a big time Justin Fields fan, big time Justin Fields supporter, loved him in the draft. I actually wanted the Cowboys to take him instead of trading back, but it's neither here nor there. But when I look at this, the talent on this roster, with starting out with Mooney, Claypool, Fields, Herbert, Foreman, Kmet, then you were saying they brought in Rob Tunyon and DJ Moore bringing in. Do you think Chase Claypool has a legitimate opportunity to be a legitimate weapon in this offense, or do you think he's going to be either replaced or overlooked after giving up what ended up being a really nice pick that they gave up to go get him, and it just seemed like they never meshed last year?
Really interesting, because he came over from Pittsburgh, and the way Pittsburgh was using him was like behind the line of scrimmage a lot of jet motion, a lot of quick outs, and let him kind of make guys miss in space. And then he comes to Chicago, and I remember like the Jets game in particular, and one other game, and part of it probably was the playbook, but he basically was just like a jump ball guy that just used, just boxed out with his size and didn't really do a whole lot otherwise. So I know he also had the comment that he didn't like lining up in the slot, all these things that you probably don't want to see. I think he absolutely could have a big role here, where like I think he can block if he lines up in the slot. I think he can. He's not going to be Alan Lazar, but like, you can kind of use him in creative ways and do different things than just having him be this contested catch guy. So it's probably up to him more than anybody else, but the talent is there. I think you got to just get comfortable in this offense, build chemistry, learn the playbook, all those things. But yeah, I don't think they've given up on him. I just think, it's going to be tough to pay all three receivers. So, I don't think he's going to get extended before the season or anything like that.
Yeah. And when they made the trade, I mean, you weren't expecting that to be the 32nd pick in the draft either.
Yeah. I like to say I'm over that. What's in the past is in the past.
Right.
So, Brad, we had one more question for you before we jumped into the roster, and that's something you're nervous about with this roster.
I mean, it's going to be, I guess I'll say I'm more nervous about the defensive line than the offensive line. Obviously Darnell Wright's progression is going to be interesting. How does Cody Whitehair shake out at center? But I think the unit's probably good enough, and I like enough pieces there. For me, the defensive line, I mean, last year, you get down in games, which you're going to do, and then teams can just lean on you and just run 6-7 yards a clip down your throat. And it's just kind of hard. I don't care how good the offense might be. It's a pretty hard proposition to sit there for 9-minute drives. A team goes down, scores, and you just can't really overcome that. So, like I said, they did add interesting pieces. I'm probably higher on Rasheem Green than a lot of people. I think he's a fascinating kind of athlete that you can do a lot of different things with. Obviously, DeMarcus Walker was kind of the splash signing for that defense. But I just, the interior, like Andrew Billings, good nose tackle, made good plays last year for the Raiders. But I just still wonder, where are you getting pressure from without blitzing? Because Eberflus doesn't really love to blitz. How are you getting to the quarterback with 4 rushers? I don't really know.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine they're going to have to game a lot of stuff up on that D line. But so Rasheem Green, he's a guy that I actually know very little about. Like, I have some notes on the roster here in front of me, but like, he's a guy who I didn't really have a lot of stuff on. It was really just the PFF stats that I was looking through. And so what do you see in his game?
So I think he's pretty explosive off the line for his size. Like he's 6'3", probably 260, 270. He's a big dude. And he will kick inside, I think, on pass rush downs, but has good get off. I think his issue has been he was kind of just like a raw athlete. And so it was a lot of like if a guy got hands on him, he couldn't shake him, or he didn't have a counter to his moves. Like he would mix in a move here and there, but there was no secondary option off of that. And so I'm just thinking maybe their thought process was like get him in our building and see if we can keep building onto this foundation in place. But I mean, yeah, he was productive in Houston at over 30 pressures. Maybe didn't convert to sacks, but I think when you throw on the film, you see a guy that has a quick get off. It's just not really converting or not really getting through the line. But like you said, if they game things up, they stunt a bunch and move him around. I think he's a guy you can kind of spring load if you use him correctly.
That's interesting. That actually. I'm gonna have to go watch some of his tape now because I'm interested now because, I mean, I'll be honest, in the free agency cycle, I was just kind of like, man, they're not doing anything. Like it's like just poke him with a stick, like do something more. Which, granted, someone said to me just recently, like GMs are never praised for the moves they don't make. And it's like, yeah, I can see the value in that some, but like I just want something a bit more exciting all off season after the DJ Moore trade, which was so exciting. And it's just like it's almost like it happening that early, like created a letdown in my brain of like I was thinking that
just expecting it to be the domino.
And better and better. Yeah, exactly. The domino. That's a great way to put it. But so I was gonna say the O-line. Like I am cautiously optimistic with this group. Like I keep having to tell myself, like I look at it, I'm like, it could work. Yeah, that could work. And I'm like, wait, I need to temper myself. Like it's a fifth round second year player. It's a first round rookie. Like still a rookie, right? First round, great. You love it. Top 10, but it's still a rookie. And then just some health questions on the inside. What do you make of what they've got there on the O-line? I'm curious to hear your opinion on it.
Yeah, so with Braxton Jones, I do think he still lose to power last year, and it was evident that he, coming from Southern Utah, 5th-round pick, a guy that could bull rush or could simply just convert speed to power was probably going to push through him. But I think he's a very good athlete for his size, has great footwork, and I think you saw him get better and better as the season went on. I think he's great out in the run game, but look, he was a top 20 graded tackle for us last year, and I will tout, our trench grades I think are usually very, very solid. Maybe compared to other position groups. But it's like I think it was really just him adjusting to NFL speed after barely even playing at college speed at Southern Utah, with all due respect. So I'm high on him. I think he's going to be a good football player. Sounds like he's an extremely hard worker. Every press conference, he's a likable guy as well. So I'm cool with him. With Darnell Wright, though, I think there is going to be the classic like over expectation. And even look at just last year. I mean, Evan Neal was a significantly more touted prospect than Darnell Wright was, and was not good for the Giants at right tackle. And yeah, it was a position switch for him. I guess Wright is kind of a natural right tackle, and I think his trajectory is sharply upward. His grades and stuff 2 years ago are not particularly good, but you watch the film against Will Anderson, everyone talked about, but Derek Hall and a couple other games I watched, and he just, unlike Braxton Jones, he does not lose the power. Like the guy is a tree trunk, and just like you can't push him over. So I'm cautiously optimistic on the tackles. I think we'll see how it goes. I think they will use Fields' athleticism to kind of mitigate if those guys are on islands, how badly it goes. The interior, I think, is going to be good. If Tevin Jenkins stays healthy, I think this guard duo could quietly be one of the better guard duos in the NFL. Nate Davis in particular, top 10 grade for us on zone runs the last 3 seasons. Obviously, you come in, Chicago was like second in inside zone and probably top 10 in outside zone runs. So that's going to be your bread and butter. And coming from Tennessee, it's a perfect match. And then Cody Whitehair, I thought he always played his best football at center outside of snapping, which obviously is a big caveat, but I thought he blocked the best at center. So long answer short, like there's a disaster scenario, there's a high upside scenario. I think realistically they're an average offensive line, and I'll take an average offensive line any day of the week.
Hey, average offensive line with elite skill set talent can get it done every day of the week. I did have one question. I don't follow the Bears too terribly close. I mean, I get a lot of it from Quentin and everything, but followed big fan of college football. Follow the Big 12 more heavily than anything. Being a Texas Tech guy, But Tevin Jenkins at left guard there, is there still the hope that he can be a bookend tackle, or is he more or less permanently a guard at this point?
He's permanently entrenched now. In this regime, I think pretty much right away thought he would be better on the inside, which I almost think I agree with. Honestly, he was always a road grader in college. Like he was fine at right tackle his last college season. I know he played both, but like I just think that his grit, his nastiness, I think he stacks up well against the bigger interior defensive linemen, and can actually get a push forward, not just kind of like I think he wants to play forward, and that is why in part I think it makes more sense to have him on the interior. Like he doesn't want to drop and be passive. I think he wants to be active. So I don't know. Maybe who knows with him? He changes position every week.
Yeah, I was just curious if this was that he's still young and just kind of trying to break him in, get his feet wet, but the ultimate goal was still to be one of those bookends for you. But I mean, he's a hell of a player. I mean, at that guard spot, I thought he played great from what I saw last year. So I just didn't know if I was missing something or if there was still the hope that he's your future at left tackle or possibly
Correct
right
me if I'm wrong, Quentin, but I don't think so.
No, I mean Braxton Jones showed a lot to like last year at left tackle, and
Okay.
I mean if he fell down, like if he really struggled this year, I think it would. Maybe I'm doomsday in this, but I think it would hurt the Bears a lot, and they'd probably have a high draft pick, and you might be looking at a guy like Fashan, who out of Penn State playing left tackle going forward. But I really like the way you put that about Jenkins, that you think he likes to play forward, because as Jay was asking that question, yeah, like I was thinking, like, you know, and as you were responding to it, Brad, I was like, you know, yeah, he does, you know, he's a guy who it feels like kind of needs to get that momentum in his play, and he'll start stacking plays. But if he's having to play backwards, it's hard to make that momentum happen, right? So like that fit at guard does make a lot more sense, I think.
Yeah, no doubt.
And I can't help but wonder if his back issues did limit some mobility there, which kind of might have forced him inside a little. But I'm not a doctor. That's not my place to say. Let's take a look at the defense over here. And it was rough. It was a rough year last year, man. I got these numbers in front of me: 32nd in points allowed, 32nd in EPA per play, 32nd in success rate, 32nd in PFF grade. I mean, it was rough. And they went out, they got two shiny new linebackers right there in the middle. And as a salary cap guru, how does that make you feel, Brad?
It was interesting, right? So you talk about the splashes you were looking for in free agency, and I think the timing was just not great, where they obviously need interior defensive line. Well, first they need edge, and there were basically no good edges in free agency. But then you go to interior defensive line, and the market happens to be exploding this offseason. I mean, on par with wide receiver last year, where I like Draymond Jones. Am I mad the Bears didn't give Draymond Jones $17 million a year? Not really. Like Zach Allen getting almost 16, I think it was 15.75. Like, good player, good football player. I'm not paying him that either. So I think he just didn't really line up particularly well. And so, you know, there's certainly cause for concern. But with the linebackers, I do buy into the narrative on Edmunds. First, just being a better fit, has the size, probably 5 inches taller than Roquan Smith. I think does play backwards well. You know, was phenomenal in coverage last year. And the last piece for me, and I know this is like, I always try to not fall into these narratives, and now I'm kind of in this space, but you talk to Bills people. I met a bunch of them at the Combine and was talking about Tremaine Edmunds. This is funny because I didn't know he was going to be a Bear. I was just working on free agency stuff and trying to project his deal, all these things. And they said, there are some people that asked us, like, why was he so good in his contract year after not being great? You know, is that a red flag? Is there a reason for that? And they were like, the dude is 25 years old. He was just figuring out how to play football for the first couple of years he was here. They're all sad to see him go. And they were just like, yeah, it's just like, once the game slowed down for him and he knew what he was trying to accomplish on a given snap, then he became the guy we drafted, you know, in the first round. So I think the sky's the limit for him. I think he's going to be a phenomenal football player in Chicago for a long time. You know, but it was interesting that is your big splash spend is that off-ball linebacker.
I will say, as an unbiased fan of the NFC North, having Matt Eberflus go out and spend money on linebackers as a Bears fan wouldn't bother me one bit at all with his track record.
Yeah, Cowboys linebacker
I know
for a while, right?
And I know whenever you look at it, you're like, oh, I don't want to spend the money on the off-ball linebackers. But when you look at some of the dominant Cowboys defenses, like 16, 17, 18, like that, like what he did with Jalen Smith his rookie year, what he did with Leighton Vander Esch, what he did with Sean Lee, some of the guys that came through, then some of the journeymen that were also in there at the same time. I mean, the impact they were able to make at that linebacker position, you just don't see in today's current NFL. So going to get two studs like that, I mean, in my opinion, yeah, as a capologist, maybe you don't like it, but I mean, given the track record and the talent and ability of these guys that they brought in, I mean, I think as Bears fans, you're immediately going to fall in love with this linebacker core and be like, oh my God, like people, you could still play off the ball linebacker at a high level and make a positive impact on the game every single week.
We saw Jack Sanborn do it last year.
I'm excited. I'm excited to see what he does with these guys.
No, for sure.
So on the D line, one question I actually had this question in my notes specifically. Like, do you think we see them go after a guy like a Matt Ioannidis or like a Shelby Harris or something like that on the interior just to try to beef this up a little more?
I would love to see either of those guys sign in Chicago. Harris, a bit older, but was still a really good player last year. I don't really understand why Seattle kind of shook up their entire interior this offseason. But, yeah, I think they're going to add a defensive lineman. I don't know if it's going to be a free agent. I don't know if it's going to be a trade. I don't know if it's going to be an edge or an interior guy. But I don't think we know the starting defensive line as of today. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm delusional. But I'll ride that line until September 10th or whatever it is.
Well, I'm hoping with you there because I mean I might be one of the only people to say this, but I mean I was big on Javon Dexter coming into this draft, and I love him, but I don't think that he's a guy who's ready to start day one. And outside of that, you're looking at Justin Jones and Andrew Billings, who are fine NFL players, but like you'd like a little more there, you know. And then looking at the secondary. So, big year for Jalen Johnson here, right? I mean, he is a free agent after this year. He's put together some nice tape. He's put together some stuff that really is just injuries, I feel like, that are really bogging him down more than anything. After he's gotten hurt, some of his stats haven't been quite as good, but his stats before he gets hurt tend to be like really, really good. He's such a scheme versatile player. What do you usually see with cornerbacks like this, as if you even know of like that are going into contract years and kind of are in a put up or shut up year to try to really get that bag? How do you usually see them perform?
Yeah, so I agree with you. First point, like outside of injuries, I think he's been a good Chicago Bear pretty much since day one. I think it always is meaningful when you have guys like Cooper Kupp shouting you out and saying you're a good player. I think that goes a long way. He doesn't say that randomly. Yeah, it's interesting. It's been a struggle for early extensions for a lot of these guys. And so they have oftentimes entered these contract years and played through them. And then, you look at two guys in Tampa and Carlton Davis and Jamel Dean. There's been a bunch of – then you got like guys like Darius Williams and various players, Shaq Griffin, that change teams, that they're all kind of in this mid-range where it's if you're not like one of the clear elite 20 million plus guys, you kind of quickly drop into like the 12, 13 range. I think how he plays this year could dictate a ton, right? He could get poached by someone, or the Bears keep him around, tag him, whatever, for a lot of money, or he gets hurt again, and it's a struggle. You kind of see him fall into that Rock Ya-Sin and those type of guys where you're signing 1-year flyers and trying to get back to the market. So I think his range of outcomes is massive. I hope it's on the positive end. I think he has all the talent in the world to do that. I agree with you. I think, I don't think the scheme change, in particular bothered him. I kind of like him in a cover two, heavy system. I think you're getting him more opportunities to play press up at the line and do things that I think his skill set is better with, perhaps, than like a Fangio type defense. But yeah, he just got to stay healthy, stay on the field, and it all trickles down from there.
All right. So we got a little bit of time left, and before we get into record talk and everything, I got to ask a Justin Fields question here, and I'm going to kind of go a roundabout way of asking this. So you have Carolina's pick. Carolina might be good. We talked about them last week. Solid start there. You also have your own pick. And what is a successful season for Justin Fields here with multiple highly touted quarterbacks coming out of next year's draft, having potentially 2 higher picks? What does Justin Fields need to do to prove that he is the dude going forward? Or what has to happen for the scenario that you're talking about going to get Caleb Williams next year?
I think the biggest one for me is just limiting the sacks, right? And pressures are going to come because his offensive line, again, is not great. But his pressure to sack rate was the highest in the NFL last year. His average time to throw was the highest in the NFL last year. Like, things that he can control. And again, if receivers aren't creating separation, he's not going to be able to get the ball out quickly. But I think
I like Justin Fields. It was just a question.
Yeah, no, exactly. So, I think you could argue kind of the excuses are gone. I think the excuses were fair last year, but now it's like, all right, the unit around you is good enough. I think you combine passing and rushing, let's say like 4,500 total yards.
I think that's a good number.
Like, throw for 3,500, run for 1,000 again, or maybe, throw for 38, run for 700, whatever. I think that in that wheelhouse, but for me, it's honestly just like, be consistent, be on schedule, will play within the offense, trust your eyes, maybe some more anticipatory throws. I do think he still kind of needs to see a guy come open to get rid of the football, which is understandable. He played Ohio State in the spread offense with 3 first-round pick wide receivers. I get it, but
guys get open.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, just like, and I think he's capable of all these things. Like, his press conferences, he explains exactly what went wrong or what went right. Like, I don't think it's a lack of understanding. I think it's really just trust, and I get why he doesn't have confidence or trust in his pass catchers or his line last year. So, yeah, it's stats is part of it, of course, but honestly, it's like, for me, I just want to see the game speed up a little bit and just limit some of the downside. We already know he's a rare athlete, so just add some of the simple stuff, really.
I mean,
all right. So one more question, then I'll let you and Q finish it out, being the diehard Bears guys here. But let's say he shows enough at the end of this season to where you're not interested in getting a Drake May or a Caleb Williams or anything next year. Finishing year 3, and say he's shown enough to where you think he's the guy, but there's still a little bit there to be desired. As a cap guy, do you go ahead and sign him at what people may consider a discount for a franchise quarterback, or do you wait till year 4? Because in my mind, if you think you have a guy and you can save a couple million a year, sign him a year early, sign him after year 3, lock up that long-term deal, like make it a 3-4 year extension, whatever it is. But would you have that thought? Or if it was, let's see what we have one more year, but we're not going to go get a Caleb Williams or a Drake May, and just kind of sit and wait for one more year and see what happens? Because I mean, that contract's coming quick now that you're really getting the first true year in year 3, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think it would take a lot. Like, he'd have to be very, very good, where then you say, all right, let's just get a deal done. Like you said, another market's going to grow, so just sign him before Trevor Lawrence, sign him as soon as possible for, $56 million, whatever it's going to be at that point.
Yeah, it's going to be expensive no matter what.
For sure. But for me, it's like, if there's still any doubt, you just pick up the 5th-year option and you roll into the 4th season. You think you buy yourself some time. You have.
But don't go after.
Yeah. Just go into the 4th year, and you have the 5th-year option at your disposal. Just say, hey, look, we're still, like you said, we're not drafting anyone. We're still betting on you. We just want to see a little bit more out of you before we get there. And the counter to, like, you're smart. You're right. You want to get out ahead of it, sign a guy as early as possible. I do think a quarterback, like, I'll pay an extra $2 million a year if I'm infinitely more confident kind of in my eval, as opposed to maybe jumping the gun and pulling a Daniel Jones or whatever. So, yeah, I play it patient, even though I totally, I get the question, obviously, as a cap guy.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'll let y'all guys finish it out. Y'all are the Bears fans, so we got a little bit more of your time, so I'll let y'all finish it out.
the nightmare scenario there is what the Carson Wentz, the Jared Goff contract that you're just like avoiding like wildfire. I'll throw out one Justin Fields stat just because I've got it in front of me and he came up that from weeks 4 through 15, Fields ranked 7th in the NFL in EPA per play, 10th in success rate, 9th in CPOE, 12th in PFF grade. That's not PFF passing grade. That's overall grade. So that included running. And then 7th in deep passing grade from PFF. So there was a lot to like. It was really 5 games, weeks 1 through 3, when there were still a lot of scheme questions clearly going on and a lot of no trust really in anyone around him. And I mean, like, so I think one or two of those interceptions were probably the worst of his career from like a watching film and trying to reason it out standpoint. But then something clicked in week 4 and it all started to go uphill. And then week 16 against the Bills he actually graded really well that game, but the stats were awful. The grade was great. And it was like, there were something like 4 or 5 drops from the receivers. There were a bunch of injuries that came in that game. And I think it was just a really tough personnel thing. And then in week 17, I swear he was concussed. I do not think he was right in that game. But yeah. Brad, we know you got to get going here in a minute. So real quick here, we got some basic bets lined up here. What do you like if you have to pick something? And you're more than welcome to say, I wouldn't bet it myself, but if I have to pick something, this is what I'm picking. What do you like on the Bears odds here?
Yeah, so I do think like the bet is probably gone now. Like division winner or stuff like that, I think was bet down like crazy, and the value's probably gone. If I wanted to bet the Bears now, either you do an alternate over. So I know it's not on the screen, I'm cheating, but look, instead of betting the flat -110 on each side, 7.5, if you think they're going to take off, go bet over 9.5. I don't know what the price is. I think it's like plus 220 or something like that. Or my kind of sneaky favorite way to bet this, if you wanted to, Matt Eberflus Coach of the Year, his odds are way down the list. Like if you think they're going to go 10-7, sneak in the playoffs, whatever, try to get a little bit cheeky with it. But the thing is, the schedule's pretty easy. So they really do have a path to. I mean, you get the NFC South, and then you get the Cardinals, the Buccaneers, you get Denver, Washington, Raiders. Like there's some bad football teams on their schedule. So I say bet a tail outcome where they really they explode.
You got to play the best team in the NFC twice, though. Who
would that be? Detroit.
So up until this year, the last 2 years, we've been a Detroit Lions podcast with our motto being "Do not sleep on the Lions" because they were just money against the spread over and over and over. But we're changing that this year because we think the book's out on them and it won't work anymore. The spread's going to start.
Probably not. They'll win more games in reality, but they'll probably cover fewer spreads. Yeah.
We're like the guys that started listening to Blink 182 like 3 years before they blew up.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden Blink 182 was the biggest band in the world, and we're like, oh, we don't like it.
Right. They're too mainstream.
But, Brad, one more time, tell the people where they can find you, and we'll let you get out of here.
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys so much for having me. You can follow me on Twitter at PFF_Brad, putting out content on PFF.com, every week, and overthecap.com for any contract, salary cap, anything like that you can find over there.
All right.
Awesome. Thanks so much again for joining, man. We really appreciate it, and you have a good night. And I'm always rooting for the Bears, man. So I hope y'all have a good
We need
season.
all the help we can get. Appreciate you guys. Have a good night.
All right. Well, that was the man himself, the legend. But we kind of get through all the talk about the roster and everything. Do you have anything you wanted to add now that he's gone, or
yeah, let me see. Your baby. So one thing that I want to dive in a little more on some of the things I said. Just we were kind of plowing through on some of it, but
yeah,
like
went by fast.
So on that, the 5 weeks I was talking about where Justin Fields' stats are like unforgivably bad, and then the weeks 4 through 15 where it was like this guy might be really freaking good.
Yeah,
so. In the bad stretch, he ranked 23rd in deep passing by PFF grade. In the good stretch, 7th. Like there are multiple major jumps like that are like pretty impressive. As far as saying like, okay, there might have been more at play here because he gave us enough glimpses that you can start to feel really good about some of them. Now, that's not to say I'm fully on the train of like he's made it, he's there. He's not. He still needs to get better as a passer, like Brad mentioned, with the anticipation, with the seeing it before he throws it. That is a bit of an issue, and it's almost like there are times on tape where you're like, you see that he sees it, and you see that he's like, I know I should pull this trigger, but there's a 60-40 chance that guy catches the ball. If I run, there's a 90% chance I get a first down. Like you can see it going through his brain of just like, this isn't the better option.
Yeah. So I'll ask you basically what I asked him. Like, what do you need to see out of Justin Fields this year? Assuming if he's not great, you're going to have probably a top 15 pick on your own with this roster. Assuming Cardinal or Panthers are league average or a little bit less, 2 picks in the top 12, and Justin Fields maybe progresses a little bit. He shows a little bit more as a passer, but now you have weapons. Now you have the Darnell Mooney's. Now you have Cole Kmet coming into year 2, year 3. With the Chase Claypools, and you went and got DJ Moore. You got help in the backfield. But let's say he doesn't really make the jump, but he's still pretty good. Like at what point, like what do you do in that situation? Because it's like you have some of the most premier talent we've seen, and 2 of the best quarterbacks that we've seen come out in a while with Drake May and Caleb Williams. I'm sure somebody else will rise up as well. And then after that, I mean, you're looking at Quinn Ewers the next year, and then a year after that, Arch Manning. But I wouldn't put either one of those guys on the level of Caleb Williams and probably even Drake May at this point. So it's like, I know it's always next year has the best quarterback. Like, we'll figure it out next year. But having the draft capital and everything going into next year's draft, like, what do we need to see from Justin Fields right here?
So
to be confident moving forward.
I mean, I'm a little more tempered on this than Brad. If we're going pure stats, I'm 4,000 yards passing plus rushing, 35 touchdowns passing plus rushing. That's what I said, which isn't last year.
To be confident moving forward?
Yeah, to feel really good about it. But like, because that's 10 more touchdowns than last year, and it's like 800 more yards. But I mean, ultimately, it's going to come down more to the tape than anything as a thrower. And if I'm being completely honest, even if the tape isn't there as a thrower, I might still just go in on it, because
if he's still running the ball as good as he can.
I mean, so I pulled up this stat the other day. I wrote an article about it. Every quarterback to ever achieve over 600 rushing yards in a single season: Russell Wilson, Donovan McNabb, Steve McNair, Cam Newton, Randall Cunningham, Michael Vick, Dante Culpepper, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Colin Kaepernick, Kyler Murray, and then you get to the uglier part: Daniel Jones, Bobby Douglas, RG3. Jalen Hurts doesn't belong in this part. He just ended up down there. And then Tim Tebow. You have...
RG3 was also RG3 was an incredible passer until everything just went to shit, too.
You have 6 Super Bowl appearances in there out of 16 quarterbacks. Not all of them were the best throwers, but you know what? You can build a team that's going to get there around it. Like, it is shown. Yeah. I mean, Russell Wilson got there twice. McNabb got there once. He went to Lord knows how many NFC championships. McNair got there once, came up a yard short of winning. Russ is the only guy to win it in this group, which is a bit concerning. But, like, the amount of guys who got there, you have 3 MVPs. You have, let's see, 7 different quarterbacks who made an all-pro team.
A lot of those guys you just mentioned would be far and away the best Bears quarterback of all time.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I don't think you ditch it just because the guy's not an immaculate passer. I don't know if I'm signing him to an extension early by any means if he doesn't, show it as a passer. But I'm letting it play out because of
my opinion
what his
on it
rushing ability has shown so far.
My opinion would be is that you didn't really get to take full advantage of the rookie contract So you might as well just get it done and start building for the future if you're not going after a quarterback right now. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck on a fourth year going into a fifth year option, and then you're stuck in the Washington purgatory of like the Kirk Cousins like saga, or like the Dallas Cowboys scenario where it's like if they would have just signed Dak and got it over with, like they would have probably been able to keep Amari Cooper in the long run. They would have been able to do a lot more, but instead they drugged their feet and then they had to franchise Dak, or like the Washington
For everyone that goes
team
bad, it goes
back.
like bad that way. There's one that goes bad the other way. So there's.
But if you sign him to an extension, like so let's say you're going into year 4, you sign a 3-year extension, you get his money right there. I mean, you're probably, the way they structure contracts in the NFL, you probably still get an out after year 2, year 3, and have the flexibility moving forward. So it's like, you, in my opinion, you may as well just get it done, make him happy, get talent in there, and then move forward rather than being potentially held hostage a year later.
But, yeah, I mean, I can go back and forth on it, but at the end of the day, I'm going to be more cautious with it if I'm not sold. Like I'm just going to. It just makes more sense to me to keep the flexibility of being less committed than it does of putting myself in a corner and having. I don't have Howie Roseman at GM to get out of the Carson Wentz deal.
Yeah,
and he's
you could just technically, but you would never see it. You could always just go the Patrick Mahomes route and just, instead of signing him to $500 million contract, you sign him. Let's say, hey, Justin Fields, we like you. You run the ball well. You can get us tutties on the field. Like, we'll give you 10 years, $290 million fully guaranteed. Then you're on the hook for $29 million for the next 10 years. But that's pretty cheap.
Yeah, it is. But yeah, I think that touched on really what I wanted to talk about with the Bears. This defense is going to be, I don't know. I just don't know what this D line, what it's going to end up being. The back seven, I feel really good about actually, but if they add a vet like a Matt Ioannidis or Shelby Harris, I think this D line starts to look better. So it starts to look like passable. But right now you have 4.
Isn't Ngakoue still in the free agency?
Yeah, he is. But honestly, I'm more worried about the interior than the edge. I mean,
and then the edge. Okay.
And the edge needs help too. Don't get me wrong; they both need a lot of help. But like,
do the Bears still have quite a bit of money?
They still have a ton of money.
So they'll get something done. It might not be the guys you mentioned, but like I'm sure they'll
get someone. It's just a matter of like. So Ryan Poles.
I mean, the free agent pool is still huge.
Ryan Poles has drawn a very clear line in the sand that he will not spend more than he thinks he should, and I don't expect that to change. I mean, the linebacker deals are pretty conservative, to be honest. Like Tremaine Edmunds' deal is a 2-year deal. A 2-year deal that is a 4-year deal if he's good. Like, I mean, they're
I'm
very...
excited for those linebackers. You look at Matt, like I mentioned earlier, but you look at Eberflus's track record with off the ball linebackers, and they make a huge difference. And having 2 of them, I'm excited for those 2 guys. But we're almost at 45 minutes on the Bears right now, so let's jump to the schedule.
Let's take a look at it.
We'll do the same for the Cowboys next week. I ain't trying to push it along or nothing. But all right, so looking at the schedule, we're strength schedule 27th in the league. And starting out, just immediately looking at it, first glance, I like late buys. That might be a little bit too late for my liking, but with an easier schedule, with a young team like that and an easier schedule, it's not too bad. So we'll break it down here. We got Green Bay week 1 at home. I love this game for the Bears, and then you go to Tampa Bay, to Kansas City. Then you got Denver coming into Chicago. Then going to Washington. So this first 5-game stretch, like I can easily see a 3-2 start is definitely not out of the question. And I think we could possibly even be talking about a 4-1 start here. I think Green Bay's the toss up in this. I absolutely think you can beat Tampa Bay. Obviously, I'm gonna say we're gonna lose. You're gonna lose to Kansas City, but any given Sunday, brother. And then I think you're a better team than Denver and Washington. So I think Tampa Bay, Denver, and Washington, I think are all winnable games. Not saying you'll win all of them, but you kind of expect to win. I think you have the advantage in a lot of those situations. I think with Green Bay being the toss up and Kansas City being a loss. What do you think about that first 5 games?
Man, the Bears are the most difficult team to project this year. Honestly, like I have two wins, a loss, and 2 toss-ups in the first 5. I got them being Green Bay, got them being Tampa, got them losing to Kansas City, and a toss-up against Denver and Washington. Just because it's in Washington on Thursday night, short rest, you're the away team, and their biggest strength is one of your biggest weaknesses, and their D-line versus our O-line. So
yeah, I'm just whenever I look at matchups, this could be just me being a casual fan. I don't know, but I just look at quarterback versus quarterback, and I'm like, who has the better quarterback in the game? And as long as they're not severely overmatched everywhere else on the field, I'll take the better quarterback. And I think they have the better quarterback in Tampa Bay, Denver, and Washington. I think Green Bay is a toss-up because it's Green Bay. It's a division game. But I think they have the better quarterback in that game as well. And I don't think they're overmatched too severely everywhere else, except maybe in the Washington game in the trenches. But I just don't know how Washington's going to get anything going offensively to where I think Justin Fields can make enough plays to swing that in their favor.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually,
and one good thing,
I'm leaning more.
One good thing about a short week with a mobile quarterback is that if shit hits the fan, he can improvise.
Yeah. I mean, I'm leaning more towards the win
won't
against
have that
Washington,
same advantage.
But at the end of the day, road team on Thursday night, it's just hard to say it's a win. For most teams.
I understand.
But Denver is actually, I think Denver is, if this game was in Denver, this would be a
sleeping giant
loss. Like that team has a lot more talent than they're getting credit for.
No, I think they're a sleeping giant for sure, but I think I could see them starting the season 2-0. Kansas City being either a wake-up call to where you get your doors blown off and you're like, okay, we got to do better, and then you show up re-energized, or you keep it close and you're like, we just played with the best in the league. We just went toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes. We can do this with anybody. So I don't see a scenario coming out of that Kansas City game to where they come out flat against Denver.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's either you're gonna be 2-0 and you're gonna get humbled and refocused, or you're gonna be 2-0 and go toe-to-toe with the best in the league and be like, okay, we belong here. Like, let's go. Let's do this thing.
Yeah, I can see that.
If they beat Kansas City, I could definitely straight up see them losing to Denver.
Yeah.
Like all day. All day. But then you just watch the Denver-Kansas City scenario, and I think you still end up at 3-2, 4-1 in that first 5.
First 5, I've got 3-2.
All right, moving on. Minnesota, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, New Orleans. I see this a little bit tougher. Minnesota, I think, is the second best team in this division. And then you have the Raiders, which I don't expect to be very good. I'll give them the Raiders win. But then after back-to-back home games, you go on the road to L.A., all the way across the country. Then you have to fly back across the country and go south to New Orleans, who's going to be very well coached. Whether or not they're a good team, they're well coached and they're going to be hard nosed, tough. I see best case scenario here. You go 2-2. I think this might be a 1-3 stretch for them though after that first 5 games.
Yeah, I think they handle Minnesota at home, and I think they beat the Raiders. But the next 2 I've got is
they've got a little mini bye there against Minnesota. So
And then I've got the loss against the Chargers, and I've got a toss-up against New Orleans. I think that could go either way. But most likely, I'm leaning towards the loss against New Orleans, though.
I'll go 2-2 there. So I'll put them at what is that? I'll go 5-4 at this point in the season.
Yeah, I've gotten 5.5 and 3.5 because I have 3 toss-ups instead.
Yeah,
I don't have an even number there yet.
Yeah. So then we have Carolina, Detroit. Then you go to Minnesota, and then Detroit again. This might be a 1-4 stretch for them. I mean, you got Detroit off the bye at home, but at this point in the season, I think you might be dead even. So 13 games in, 6-7, 7-6. I think this is what this team's looking like after the Detroit game going down the stretch, which isn't a bad spot to be. I mean, you're in playoff contention, you're in the hunt, like ready to go.
Beat Carolina. I think they're going to beat Detroit on that mini bye. But
at Detroit,
yeah, and then lose to mini. I think that mini bye is going to be huge for them.
And then you get Detroit again after the bye. Think you beat Detroit twice?
Yep.
You think you beat Detroit twice?
I do. This isn't in the moment. I've said this on a podcast already this year. I think they beat Detroit twice.
Oh, I'm excited for that 4-week stretch in the podcast calendar. But then last 4 games of the season, we go to Cleveland, we go to Arizona, we go to Atlanta, we go to Green Bay. I think these are 4 winnable games, and I think this is, if they're 6-7, 7-6, I think this is where they can finish 11-7 or no, not 11-7, 10-7 or 11-6.
I've got lose Cleveland, Arizona. If Kyler's back, that's a toss-up. But if he's not, that's a win. Actually, I'm just going to throw that in toss-up because Kyler should be back. And then
I think they get to double-digit wins. I think 7.5 is way too low for this team.
I think they're going to lose to Atlanta. Atlanta's strengths and their weaknesses. Like, Atlanta is strong in the trenches.
Atlanta's trash.
They're strong in the trenches, and the Bears are weak in the trenches. And I think you win and lose in the trenches. So,
but they're not good.
That's a very valid argument. But
if they were good, why aren't they good?
I mean, they won 7 games last year.
All right. We'll fly through the rest. Yeah.
And then Green Bay, I've got as a toss-up as well. So that puts me at what? I think I've got them at
I got them at 7.5
wins.
Got them at 9. I got it at 10.5. So we're both taking the over. I'm not taking them to win the division. I think they're at plus 400. I don't think that's enough juice for, in my opinion, the third best team to take. So if I'm taking anything, NFC Championship at plus 2,200, I think is looking pretty good. I think when you have a quarterback like Justin Fields, plus 2,200 to win the NFC, and you have the potential to win double-digit games, 100 to win 2,200 is a pretty solid bet. So that might be my favorite bet out of these listed.
D-line than I do.
It's not about the D-line. It's about when you get to the playoffs, who gets it done.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we've seen people carry other people before. Injuries happen other places on the field. If I'm sitting here looking at this team and I think they're the third best team in the division and I think they can still win double-digit games, then why in the hell would I not take them at plus 2,200 to win the NFC Championship when I'm not going to take them to win the division at plus 400?
Yeah.
So, I mean, just based on odds.
If I'm being honest, I think the best bets here are just playoffs at plus 175. It's not a lot of juice, but I think that is the best value you're getting because with 7 teams,
it might be.
And I think they're an 8 to 9 win team. They're going to be right there for the 7 seed. If I'm right about that.
I think Justin Fields is just that good to where get in the dance and then it's a 1-game season from there on out. And I think Justin Fields is special enough to where at plus 2,200, I'll lay it.